NC State students have been affected with tuberculosis after their trip to the zoo. What began as a fun trip soon became a massive outbreak of a deadly disease. Just last week, we found out that approximately 45 students from North Carolina State University visited the elephant zoo in Zootopia and returned home with severe cases of tuberculosis. We last left you with information regarding the fact that these students visited the zoo in support of African Awareness Week at NC State University, which was hosted by the school's African Student Union. The goal of the trip was to educate students on the history and significance of African elephants to African culture. During their tour of the zoo, the NC State students were informed of the famous Circle of Life folktale. In this bedtime story, elephants were told to have acquired their trunks by one curious elephant who came too close to the lake water and was bit by an alligator that pulled his thin snout so far that it stretched into a trunk. Over time and through evolution, all elephants began to have elongated trunks just like the curious elephant. We are now aware that after being informed of this famous bedtime story, the NC State students were so excited and overjoyed of the history that they willingly petted the African elephant's trunks. Some students were so thrilled that they also climbed on top of the elephants for short rides around the safari. Upon leaving the zoo, students were informed to take thorough showers and clean all parts of them and their clothes that touch the elephants carefully, as the elephants are hosts for Mycobacterium tuberculosis, an aerobic bacteria that causes tuberculosis. The tour guide made sure to tell the students that the bacteria was harmless as long as the students showered well and as soon as they returned to their residence halls. Unfortunately, the tour guide was unaware that the elephant the students were petting had not been groomed in over 5 weeks due to the absence of an employee on maternity leave. Thus, the NC State students were exposed to respiratory secretions of the elephant's trunk, which was rich in the tuberculosis-causing bacterium, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Humans are a natural host for Mycobacterium tuberculosis. In 2004, tuberculosis accounted for approximately 1.5 million deaths per year worldwide. Tuberculosis is detrimental to the health of humans because as a mycobacterium, it grows at such a slow pace that the central carbon metabolism also fosters its growth at a slow pace. Bacteria endure the 3 steps of this metabolic pathway to gain energy for growth. Those 3 steps include glycolysis, the TCA or Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain, also known as the ETC. For those of us who need the reminder, glycolysis is the breakdown of glucose to pyruvate by way of very specific enzymes and the energy source ATP. The next pathway is the TCA cycle, which breaks down pyruvate into acetyl-CoA. While both glycolysis and the TCA cycle require NAD+ to continue their cycles, the electron transport chain serves the role of replenishing NAD+ from NADH compounds so that this can happen. These 3 pathways, glycolysis, the TCA cycle, and the ETC, are essential to metabolize bacterial tuberculosis. In this case, tuberculosis will need extensive antibiotics to stop the growth of these cells since the body gets rid of the antibiotics too quickly. Now that we're all caught up on the ways of bacterial metabolism and bacterial survival, please be careful to properly balance your diets and limit your exposure to deadly bacteria. Furthermore, we encourage you to be careful when visiting the elephant zoo in Zootopia. Here's Tony with more current news. Tony?
Thanks, Chiquini. NC State star running back Brandon Hildebrandt collapses from painful muscle spasms on the field during Sprint for the Win in the last 2 seconds of the homecoming game. Clemson wins. Fans were angry at first, but then watched on in horror when realizing something was wrong. Doctors say an infection with Clostridium tetani is the cause, and the bacteria entered his body through a small cut on his foot caused by stepping on a nail. Other symptoms the young man is reportedly experiencing include trouble swallowing, fever, and painful muscle stiffness. Clostridium tetani is an anaerobic bacterium that releases a toxin that interrupts the flow of a neurotransmitter in the brain, causing constant contraction of muscles. Since Clostridium tetani is an anaerobic bacterium, it undergoes fermentation rather than aerobic respiration. Anaerobic bacterium go through glycolysis to produce energy for growth, but the pyruvate from glycolysis goes through fermentation to produce alcohol or lactic acid, rather than going to the TCA cycle or the ETC. Fermentation recycles the NADH to produce NAD+ for use in glycolysis. Clostridium tetani fermentation produces alcohol similar to the process of making beer. Brandon is currently undergoing treatment with antitoxin and antibiotics at Wake Med and should make a complete recovery. The antitoxin is used to neutralize the tetanus toxin, while the antibiotic penicillin is used to prevent Clostridium tetani from growing. The bacteria will still be able to produce energy through glycolysis, but will not be able to multiply due to penicillin interfering with cell wall construction. We will keep you updated on this progress. This includes today's Science in the News segment. Log on next week for more newsworthy microbe stories.